Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Tons going on in the world of the NBA, even if there is actually no basketball today, because today is the day to get out and vote. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, let's start there. What are your thoughts on this policy by the NBA making today, Election Day, a no games day in order to encourage people to go vote rather than get distracted by, say, basketball or something?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a little odd because for the vast majority of people, by the time they would be interested in a basketball game, it would already be like
Polling places are closed.
Yeah, would be over for the day. But I get it, right? They're doing everything they can to support people voting. It's funny how many people have come out and like been critical of this, and it's like no one should be critical of anything that encourages folks to vote, like because they're not saying vote one way or another. Right. Fine, if people want to read between the lines and look for hidden messages and everything else, it's going to happen anyway. But yeah, they just want people to vote, so I think it's great. I had a lot of fun with last night. Everybody playing and games every 15 minutes. How nice was it too that like games started like basically when the listed time was
that was bizarre. Yeah, I couldn't believe, like, I was shocked when that happened. That even made me like a minute or two late for my live stream of the game because I turned it on. I went, what do you mean they're playing already? It's not normally it's what 7 or 8 minutes after the listed start time when they actually start the game, and they were already like a minute
between
into
15 minutes and 3 hours on an ESPN game.
That is also true. Yes.
Well, man, if you were 2 minutes late, you might have missed the best part of the Lakers game.
I probably did at that point. That was my goodness. The Utah Jazz cannot miss a shot. They have forgotten how to miss. They just hit and hit and hit everything. Even long contested jumpers, doesn't matter. Everything is dropping. Incredible stuff for them. But let's get into the news around the NBA here, and let's start. We spent last show on so much negative stuff. I want to get kind of the lone negative story. Well, okay, we've got two of them, I suppose, out of the way, and that's Cam Johnson, a meniscus trim, and so he's going to be out for 1 to 2 months with that. There were some people that were questioning, like, why did they go with the meniscus trim instead of a repair? But I've seen this idea floating around that maybe this was just this specific injury. This is what it required, because sometimes there's a sense that if you just do a trim, yes, the player gets back earlier, but is there a greater risk for future injury? And that's kind of what teams weigh in this situation. And I've seen a pushback against that in this situation with people saying, well, you know what, this might have just been the best course of action, period, long-term and short-term, and not necessarily the team prioritizing short-term over long-term.
Yeah, exactly. They in Street Clothes on Twitter at In Street Clothes. That's Jeff Stotts. He's one of the best injury people to follow that you can find. And he said, a meniscectomy, which is when they trim the meniscus, may have been the only option based on the location of the tear. And then he went on to explain, Johnson should be able to make it back this season. And that is very common with meniscus injuries. Sometimes where it's torn, the type of tear that's happened, a lot of times the trim or the shave or whatever you want to call it is best versus the actual full repair. Full repair, like we saw with Colin Sexton, that likely would have kept Johnson out for the rest of the season. At this point, are very, very close to it. But the trim allows guys to get back quicker, but there can be some long-term problems as well. Meniscus surgeries are very tricky just in general. So we're hopeful that Cam Johnson gets past this because the Suns need him, and this is contract year for Cam Johnson. So I kind of wonder if the Suns were – I don't think at all they influenced him one way or the other. It's probably like, here's what the doctors are saying. But I wonder if there's an understanding of like, okay, we're going to take care of you. You do whatever the doctors advise you to do to get this taken care of. But we got you on the back end contract wise.
And that's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
That's the right thing to do. You're concerned about the player's long-term well-being. And if this is the correct course of action, then you do that. It shouldn't be a, hey, get back out here as quickly as possible because you've got another contract on the line, especially if the team is looking at the player as a long-term piece for them. That's what Cam Johnson certainly is.
Absolutely.
Is there any, I mean, I know this question's been out there. Jay Crowder with Cam Johnson now out? Is there any way, do you mend the fences at all, or has that ship completely sailed?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say that ship has sailed, but we've seen a couple times guys come back in the last couple of years where it was like, well, this guy's done there. He's never going to
Mhm.
play another game. And then next thing you know, it's like, all right, we're going to bring him back into the fold. And here we go. So I tend to think probably not. I do wonder if maybe this heightens the, hey, let's get a trade done kind of decision making. So let's say Johnson, my guess is probably the 2 months is the more likely occurrence here versus the 1 month that they're saying that he could miss. If it's 2 months, that's the beginning part of January. So we'll already be past the December 15th early trade window opening there. So I wonder if the Suns are going to start getting stuff lined up here. And this might be one of those where Phoenix has a deal in place, and then we hear about it like on December 15th when somebody else may be trade eligible and they're able to get that deal made, and that's where it goes. So I'm gonna guess we don't see Jay Crowder again in a Suns uniform, but it wouldn't entirely shock me if all of a sudden it was like, hey, we're gonna bring him back into the fold and play and go from there. We'll see.
I mean, different sport, but it seemed like Cam Akers was completely banished from the
Yeah.
Rams, and now suddenly he's getting snaps for them. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you never know, I suppose. Last other, negative injury news we've got here: Pascal Siakam, big blow for the Raptors, out
Yeah.
indefinitely with an adductor strain. Um, I mean, what do you do here if you're the Raptors? You just have to kind of keep moving on as best you can, right?
Yep.
There's not necessarily a resulting move that you can make to fix this situation.
No, definitely not. And they're not going to panic in anything. They've got enough depth to get by. I think their biggest challenge is Pascal Siakam was in effect their backup point guard
Mhm.
behind Fred VanVleet. They run a ton of the offense through him, also Scotty Barnes. And VanVleet's been nicked up this season already and in the past years as well. So one of the things you don't want to do here if you're Toronto is you don't want to push VanVleet to play through anything just because they were really shorthanded at the ball handler position. You just, put more on Scotty Barnes' plate. Delano Banton, give him some more reps. Maybe go to Malachi Flynn. Maybe this is where you look to, all right, hey, Ken Birch, do we really need him with the emergence of Christian Coloco? We've got Chris Boucher and all these other players that we have that can play up front. Maybe you look at making a trade there to go get another point guard if there's a team that's kind of like, hey, we could use a big. Just you kind of moving pieces around for better fits and need to fill needs. Maybe that happens, but yeah, I think for now I think you just roll with what you got if you're Toronto. Maybe make a small deal if it looks like this is something that could linger, but probably got to get through the next 3-4 weeks, and then you're probably fine.
So you've got, from one situation with the Raptors, you've got an injury that is, could potentially set the team back. They've been playing very, very well. Jumping over to a player who could be looking to make a return, Jonathan Isaac returns to 5-on-5 action. Now, I'd assume that doesn't mean he's getting back on the court next week or anything like that for Orlando, but this is still good news for a guy who has not played in a long, long time and has so much upside and so much potential if and when he can get back out on the floor.
Yeah, this is insert the Obi-Wan Kenobi meme, right? That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Right? I mean, he hasn't played since the bubble. He got hurt in the bubble. Second game in the bubble is the last time we saw Jonathan Isaac play. So it's been well over 2 years now since we've seen him. So let's see. I mean, obviously Orlando is in no rush to force him to play any earlier than need be and until he's ready. They've got nothing but bigs. Literally, they don't have any guards other than Jalen Suggs really that are healthy on the roster right now. So yeah, my guess is, let's see what this looks like. I do kind of think the emergence of Bol and he's playing very well for the Magic may push this to a position of, all right, let's get Jonathan Isaac back on the floor. Let's give him 10 to 15 minutes a night. Let him kind of show what he can do, and then let's see if we can get a team interested via trade to go. Remember, he's got that kind of weird contract now where it's only partially guaranteed the next couple of seasons because he didn't hit games played thresholds early on. So that could be something where a team could say, yeah, hey, well, we'll take him in, and it's not a no risk, but a low risk flyer. For a team, especially if they need a big and somebody you can defend. But at this point, I think you're just like, I don't even know what to expect when this guy plays again because it's been over 2 years now.
And it's not easy to jump right back into NBA basketball. The speed, just the pace of the
Yep.
game, the physicality, like it's going to be a major adjustment for him. So again, I'm not saying he's back like tomorrow or anything like that. And he should be given enough leeway to truly ramp up and get going and get back out there. And that's to deal with what he's dealt with over the last couple of years is certainly not easy. And so rooting for him, hopefully he is able to get back and make a return, regardless of what the Magic ultimately decide to do with him. Your Celtics got a disabled player exception from Danilo Gallinari. What are they going to do with it?
Yeah, my guess is nothing. My guess is they probably won't use this in the end. I we'll see, right? It's one of those things where I think what happens here with this disabled player exception is this is about giving yourself options and putting. I literally wrote this for Celtics blog, so I'm kind of plagiarizing myself here, but it's about putting tools in your toolbox, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you, why not? It hurts you nothing to get this. I had a lot of people ask, well, this means Gallinari's definitely out for the season. Can't come back. Nope. Doesn't mean that. If he is able to get back before the end of the year, highly unlikely. But if he was, well, you got lucky and he's back. Like it doesn't mean anything with that. It's $3.2 million. So slightly above the veteran minimum amount. Now, what is important is in January, the veteran minimum will start to prorate. Well, it prorates by day, but all other exceptions will prorate as well. So everybody's sitting on like leftover MLE money or
Mm-hmm.
room exception or whatever. Those will start to prorate. For the Celtics, this does not prorate. This stays whole until March 10th. So they would be able to potentially in buyout season, because it expires roughly a month after the trade deadline, they would be able to outbid a couple teams by saying, hey, we can offer the full $3.2 million if the player really wants that. So we'll see where that goes with this. So I don't, my guess is they probably don't use it, but maybe, could also make trade it's a little easier to pull off if it was, hey, the team's got to send 3 million extra out and
Mm-hmm.
Boston didn't have a way to get it. All right, well, we could take the player into the disabled player exception. Couple rules. If you really want an in-depth breakdown, people can read my piece on Celtics blog about this. Can be only used for one player. Player has to be on an ending contract if they're traded for or claimed off waivers. So they have to contract basically expiring deal, and options don't count in that. So you have to truly be on an expiring contract. And the player, if you go to sign a player, it can only be for the remainder of this season. So Celtics had one of these for Gordon Hayward a few years back. They used it actually on trade deadline day after they couldn't make a trade to use it. They used it to sign Greg Monroe for the rest of the season. So maybe they do something. We'll see. Right now, Boston doesn't have an open roster spot, and a disabled player exception is a cap signing exception. It is not a roster exception. You do not get an extra roster spot with this.
Right. So the usefulness of it is somewhat limited, but
yes,
again, the cost of
the
getting
small
it is
amount
nothing.
too. Yeah, for only 3.2 million.
Right. All right, let's jump over to my Lakers. What do they do here, Keith? They are 2-8 on the season right now, and there's a lot of question marks around them. In fact, some rumors that were swirling yesterday about might they put Anthony Davis on the trade market. So from a cap perspective, what does this team do moving forward here? When I look ahead at how much cap room they'll have next summer, I don't see enough to really build out a full team alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis, even assuming that you let pretty much everybody else walk away. So where do the Lakers go? Is their best bet to just stay the course and try to preserve draft capital for next year and make a trade next summer? Is it to try to do something right now? There's a lot of Lakers fans saying, do something now. This team is drowning. Throw them a life preserver. What's your take from an outside perspective?
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, a lot of the conversations we've had as it pertains to Russell Westbrook, those are still true, right? We wouldn't necessarily, nothing changes there. It's hard for the Lakers really have three truly tradable salaries, and they're all the three big salaries, with the caveat of LeBron James, despite what you might have heard on a few of the talking head shows, they can't trade him this year. He cannot be traded because of when he signed his extension and the mechanisms with which he signed his extension. He is not trade eligible this season. So that really leaves Davis or Westbrook if you're trying to return anything of true value. right? So that turns into, all right, well, then that means Davis, a little bit of a different story than Westbrook, obviously. So for me, I am closer to the point of just ride it out because I don't know what trade you're making that is really going to fix everything. Unless you get completely blown away by a team that says, "Hey, everything you gave up for Anthony Davis, we want to give you something similar to
Yeah.
that in a package." Because then now what you've done is you've wiped $40 million for next year off your books. Now you basically have LeBron because yeah, Max Christie counts it as 1.7 million, but you could very easily dump that
Sure.
with no problem.
And it's
Somebody
not a
would
huge deterrent from the move either. Like even if you kept him, it's
exactly,
1.7 million.
exactly. So yeah, if I'm not trying to be backdoor my way into a snarky joke against the Lakers front office, but if you can't work around $1.7 million, you don't deserve your jobs, right? I mean, that's the reality. So I would say though, with this whole situation is I much like I've said, I don't know that I trade Russ in both picks because I don't know that there's a trade right now today that fixes this
Mm-hmm.
and is worth sacrificing cap space into the future for. Um, Davis, that one's harder. You'd have to really be saying, "All right, LeBron, we're blowing it up. We're going to rebuild around you and as much flexibility as we have." Because that's basically all you've got left at that point would be LeBron James next year. And it's hard because to your point, $30 million of cap space sounds great, but that's not even enough for a max deal. It's not even
No.
enough for a max deal for a guy coming off a rookie scale contract. So that's where it gets really hard is that 30 million might be better spent for just the way the Lakers are built right now, 10 million a piece on three different guys
Yeah.
versus throwing 30 million all on one player. Yeah, I don't know, man. They're in a very, very tough spot.
Well, and then even if you do that, you're talking about LeBron, AD, three guys at 10 million apiece.
Mhm.
That's five players, and then the rest of your roster is essentially veteran minimums, with the exception
Well, not
of
that different than now.
well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like, but that's the problem right now is
yeah.
that they don't have any depth because they continue to just sign guys to 1 year veteran minimum deals. And the only way to really break that cycle is to get cap space and therefore sign longer term deals and be able to get bird
Mhm.
rights for players and then eventually exceed the cap. But without being able to have bird rights on some of these guys, you're stuck in this perpetual cycle of, oh, okay, here you go. Here's the spotlight for you, Malik Monk. Hey, you've been a great value this year. Oh, but we can't keep you, right?
Yeah.
And so you're going to
It-
get stuck in that situation.
and this is very much, hindsight 2020 stuff. But last summer, even re-signing, I don't know, Avery Bradley, I'm just going to throw him out there because
Sure.
that's, my guy. Even if they'd re-signed Avery Bradley to another minimum, at least you would have had then his bird rights, and you could have then signed him to a contract as part of one of those. It's almost I call it almost a fake contract as part of a sign and trade where you give him $10 million fully guaranteed in year one, and then the next 2 years are non-guaranteed, but you're giving him $10 million to be part of salary matching in this
Right.
trade to T Max that's going to return us a guy. They didn't do a very good job with flipping salary slots forward over the last couple of years because they did the almost the full reset of the roster two off seasons ago around the kind of their big guys. Then this off season it was again almost a full reset. Player talent wise, totally get it, right? That wasn't necessarily the mistake because the guys on last year's roster, I mean, look at how many of them remained unsigned
Sure.
deep into the
Yeah.
summer. Even some of them, we're going to talk about one of them. He just landed a job and it's not in the NBA.
It's not in the US.
But
Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, not even in this half of the world. But and this is a cold-hearted, callous, math-driven way to think about it. But it would have been good for just take a couple of those spots. Don't think of them as the players. You got to think of it as the salary slot and what could we create and turn that into. And that's where they have not done a good job is around the edges because we've seen teams be super top heavy before roster wise, but then rebalance and rebalance and rebalance. They hit and I did misspeak a little bit. Patrick Beverley's contract could be a very
Yes.
tradable deal, of course,
13
but
million expiring.
yeah, that's only going to go so far. Get what you do. My thing is this AD stuff becomes super interesting to me because I don't know that it is likely, or let me rephrase. I know it's not likely that he gets traded, but I wouldn't say there's a 0% chance. It's definitely a non-zero chance
Sure.
that if they say, "Hey, no one's doing anything for us." So our only way out of this without trading our draft picks is to trade AD, and that allows us the quickest way to free up roster flexibility plus add some draft capital, probably add in a couple younger players too that maybe we can keep or we can retrade down the line. That's probably your only way out of this right now if you're the Lakers. And that's tough because it was right. We were all sold on AD he's going to be the next guy, right?
Correct.
After LeBron, he's the next guy. And I don't know that it's would be the wrong thing to do too. Because what's your confidence level? You're the Lakers guy. What's your confidence level? You're ever going to see AD play 60 or more healthy games
Yeah,
in a season the rest
that's
of the way?
that's just it. That's part of the that's part of the problem because this is what we heard was that going into the season, the Lakers wanted to find out could AD be their 1A guy, right? They wanted to have some sort of clarity on that because based on 2020, the answer was 100% yes. The next two seasons, not so much. They were concerned not just with his injury status, but with what he's done when he's been healthy on the floor. And so far this season, like he's been really good defensively, but I think that's fair to continue to have those questions. Is he really a 1A guy? And if the answer is ultimately no, if that's what they land at, then you kind of need to figure out something moving forward, whether it's you trade him or not.
Mhm.
Um, I think the Russell Westbrook situation complicates everything that much further
Without a
in
doubt.
a good way. He's been good this season. He's been better than we saw last season. It's actually been kind of fun. The LA fans have been getting behind him and everything. It's been a complete reversal from what we saw last year. So that's been good. But then the question becomes, well, okay, but now if you trade Russell Westbrook for a wing and a big, or if you trade Russell Westbrook for Josh Richardson and Jakob Poeltl or something like that, right? How much better are you actually getting, even if you're getting better fitting pieces? Because Russ now isn't a net neutral value on the floor, or maybe even a
Mhm.
negative value on the floor. Now he's actually giving you positive play. So that changes your trade calculus as well, and maybe pushes you towards, well, do you trade a Patrick Beverly and Kendrick Nunn? Do you try to find something else? So they're in such a tough spot. I think big picture, what you have to do is if you're going to do something, if you're not convinced that whatever you're doing is going to help you win right now, there's a lot of fans out there that are saying do something and do something now because it's painful right now and understandable. If you're going to do something right now, whatever that something is, has to help you next season,
Yep.
season after. It can't just be a this season move unless you're convinced 100% that what you're getting is going to be enough. And I don't know that that's out there.
No, completely agree. And that's where I think the idea, at least, of AD could be our way to get out of this.
Yeah.
Even if that means we're sacrificing one of the better players in the league when fully healthy, then maybe that's what you have to do. Sometimes that is what you have to do, right? You have to make that call that call. Now, what I will say is I know there's a lot of people who are like, but they can't tank. They don't own their pick because the Pelicans have the swaps. That's sunk cost.
And
Doesn't
that's
matter, right? It does like you can't be making decisions around, well, we might give the Pelicans a really great pick. Oh, well, if you do, you do. I think the way the Nets, when Sean Marks took over, and it
yep.
was this is a mess. But you know what? It's a mess, and all those picks are gone. And I don't remember if he said these exact words, but he basically said them in a very early on press conferences. I don't want to talk about the draft picks anymore. We can't do anything about it. They're gone. All I can do is take us from where we are now. I'm
Mhm.
not saying the Lakers, because of the presence of LeBron, I don't know that you can basically say we're going to bottom this thing out, fully restart, and we're going to start signing, ton of randos off the street. Now you could say, well, that's kind of what's happened the last two off seasons anyway. But you can't necessarily do that with LeBron, but you could do a modified version where it is forget that pick is gone. Doesn't matter anymore. Who cares if yeah, it sucks if it turns into one of the top 3 or 4 guys in the draft, but it is what it is. We have to start building for every season beyond this. And
Mhm.
that may be the way. And then you know what? Then I trust that at this point in their relationship, the Lakers and LeBron can sit down going into the summertime and say, what do you want to do? Do
Right.
you want to be here? Do you not want to be here? If you don't want to be here because we're kind of hitting a reset and you don't want to go through that, guess what? He's still LeBron James, even though finally we are seeing he is slowing down. There's 29 teams are at least going to make a phone call and say, all right, hey, what's it look like to trade for LeBron?
Right.
And that's it, so and that's not a, well, LeBron runs the Lakers, snide remark or where I'm going at all, because it isn't. You just work with your star player. And the Lakers have shown that's what they're pretty good about that, right? They take care of their guys. And the last thing I'll say about this, I've seen way too much, not so much from Lakers fans, but just in general, of that AD trade wasn't worth it. The Lakers, got screwed. They won a championship. That's all that matters. You hung a banner. It's, flags fly forever. You won a title. It was all worth it the minute, that game ended and they were crowned champions. That's, that ship has sailed. That's
just people wanting to celebrate in the Lakers struggles. That's what you're seeing. Just like you're seeing people running around saying that Anthony Davis has no trade value, or I wouldn't even give up anything for AD. He's, all that kind of stuff. That's just people that are trying to revel in the Lakers issues that they've had for the last couple of seasons. And that's the way it goes.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, right. Yeah. That's part of it, right? That's part, it's like I like to say, right? The Lakers have the largest and quite often the loudest fans when they're good and sometimes when they're not good. And part of that comes with, guess what? You're going to get clapped back on when you're not very good. People are going to take joy in your struggles and you're, falling down. But yeah, it's you can't, the trade, you could quibble with everything since the title. That's perfectly fine. I have no issue with that. Ask a million questions about the direction of the things they've done. But the process to do the AD trade, no. I'd do it again and again and again and again, even knowing where everything went after. I wouldn't even think twice about it.
All right. Let's move on to a former Laker here. And I'm in full agreement with you on that, by the way. You win a championship. Championships are rare, despite what some people may think. They're very, very hard to get. And so if you get one, look, every team in the NBA would gladly take a few years of struggles if it means they won one championship. Let's jump over. Let's talk a little bit about Dwight Howard heading to Taiwan. He didn't get a spot in the NBA this year, so he's going to take his talents to Taiwan to go play basketball over there. Good on Dwight. If he wants to keep playing, then keep playing, do your thing. And look, you never know. Sometimes guys do bounce back into the NBA. Somebody gets injured or something like that part of the way through the season. Somebody needs a big. That doesn't happen all the time, but good on Dwight if this is what he wants to do.
Yeah, I am 99% certain this deal that he is signing with I'm not going to try to pronounce the city because I wouldn't get it right and I don't want to be disrespectful. The Leopards, it is the nickname. This deal he's signing with the Leopards, I'm 99% certain probably has some form of NBA out. And if a team says, hey, Dwight, you actually look pretty good physically, because that's really all that will matter, right? I mean, yeah, if he goes over there and he can't score at all and he looks awful on the court, that would change things. But it doesn't. He could go score 30 points per game in this league and average, 30 points, 20 rebounds, and 10 blocks, and everybody would be like, whatever. It's not the NBA. But as long as he looks good physically, you may get a team. And often the overseas leagues end, sometime in March. So there's often, with a month or so to go. So, for Dwight, it's, hey, one, still getting paid to play ball. So that's great. And, if he can step up and show he's, worth it, like perfect, then maybe a team will throw him another contract and say, hey, we're willing to bring you back. There's very, very little downside to this.
Absolutely. So good on Dwight. Hopefully he is able to battle his way back.
Now with last year, before we get into our last super fun topic, I got to look and see, because I was looking at this the other day, because there were still quite a few of last year's Lakers hanging out there that didn't.
It's a lot. Carmelo Anthony is still out there.
Wayne Ellington, DJ Augustine,
Trevor Ariza, right?
Avery Bradley, Wayne Ellington, Dwight Howard, Mason Jones. Yeah, so a few. So I think Mason Jones is playing for the Mexico City G League team.
Is he?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, I think so.
You would know that.
Did you see that report? I don't think we put that in the show rundown.
No.
Who was it? Let me see if I can find it so we can credit who it was. Mark Spears for Andscape, which is a like division of ESPN, I believe, wrote that make some room, Seattle and Las Vegas. There's some serious competition for NBA expansion in Mexico City, which the league acknowledged it is exploring through the Capitans. So
that's surprising. Yeah.
So throw them in the mix.
I would still have to. I mean, that makes it more interesting, right, in terms of expansion. But I would still have to imagine Vegas and Seattle have got to be the heavy favorites there.
My guess is that's probably a not this round, but if we do another round later and we go up to 34 teams, then all right, we could go to we could go to Mexico City and maybe like Vancouver or Montreal and another international city and try to go. It's funny, I heard a couple people say like, well, what if they're gonna do Mexico City, why wouldn't you look at like London or something? It's just still too far. Like that's the biggest challenge. It's just still too far. I mean, imagine the road trip the West Coast teams would have to take to play a game in London. Like that's great. It's got to be at least 10 hours, I would say, a flight time. Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen either. But all right. So with the Mexico City situation, I do wonder how much of that is just kind of like a tip of the cap. Like, hey, things are growing here and get your name in there. I mean, you never know. Sometimes things change and can shift. But again, my initial guess would have to be that Seattle and Vegas would still be the prohibitive favorites there. But you want to throw in some other cities as kind of like, hey, we recognize that, things are growing.
And ideally, right, it's Seattle and Vegas. Like, hey, it might be $4.5 billion now to buy in versus $4.
Oh, there you go.
Because that
we can always go somewhere else.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. So they're gonna bring in some major franchise fees when they do this.
Big time. All right, let's wrap things up with the Kyrie Irving situation. So just to kind of re-up everybody on where we're at, the Brooklyn Nets suspended Kyrie. We talked about this last show, 5 games minimum without pay. And there were 6 requirements, according to Shams Charania, that Kyrie had to meet. And those requirements were he had to apologize and condemn the film that he promoted, make a $500,000 donation to anti-hate causes, complete sensitivity training, complete anti-Semitism training, meet with the ADL and Jewish leaders, and meet with team owner Joe Tsai to demonstrate an understanding of the situation. So those are the 6 requirements. But now we're getting news that the NBPA might actually, of which Kyrie is the vice president of, one of the vice president, may appeal Kyrie's suspension. So where does this whole thing go from here? This is just a twisting, turning road here with the Kyrie Irving situation.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, he's either 2 or 3 games into it already. So if they're going to appeal it, it's probably just to get him money back, right? Because it's not like you couldn't go back and say, well, we need to replay those games. Like that would never be a thing. So
if it is 5 games, by the way, looking at the schedule, I think he would return against my Lakers if it's only 5 games, because of course
that would be fair. Yeah, I mean, this is in no way an endorsement of Kyrie Irving in the things he has done since he shared that link. This is the NBPA doing what the NBPA's job is. Yeah. It is to stick up for their constituents, for their union members, to basically say, hey, we can't just have teams suspending guys because they didn't like something that they expressed thought in. Because you have to, I get it, right? Conspiracy theory guy jumps all the way to what happens when somebody says they like the color green instead of the color blue. Sure. Like, right. And then it becomes, are they going to suspend them? And it's like, all right, well, you had to go from here to 5 million miles from here, right? It's just, let's breathe. This is more just hey, we don't want to set precedent here. What are we doing? Where are we at? The conditions you're putting upon him. Maybe I've seen a lot of people suggest, maybe a little bit much, but we'll see. I mean, supposedly he's meeting with Adam Silver today. We have not heard yet any of the stuff out of that. I'm certain we will. It's only going to be a matter of time. What comes out of that meeting? There are some people, very credible people. I mean, you don't have to do much of a Google search to find it, who have said this might be it. We might not see Kyrie again. He may say, you know what, I'm not going to do do this. I don't want to do this. I don't believe
Mhm.
I should have to. And then that's when the MBPA really wants to get involved, because now one of their members is losing a job, over.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough, because I think what he did is abhorrent. I don't agree with it. We've already talked that over and over and over again. It is it I said all along, like, it shouldn't be a year-long suspension. You certainly shouldn't lose, all rights to play basketball, I don't believe. But it is, I also don't know that the things the Nets asked him to do are all that crazy, like, of an idea. Maybe the biggest one, honestly, for me is the saying you must donate $500,000. Like, that's a little hard, because in a sense, that's almost like a fine. And that
Right.
is, you can't fine players that much money. You're not allowed to in one single transgression under the CBA. So I thought Jaylen Brown put it really, really well. What he said was, yeah, we may appeal this, because I think that's where a lot of this appeal is coming from. The appeal word is. But he basically said, look, we're all kind of making it up as we go here, because we've never had anything like this before. And I think that's really important to make sure we know, is nobody knows, because there's not a handbook to point to say, well, that's it. There we go. Like, there's not a, one of these where it's, well, you bumped the referee, so that's a 1-game suspension. Like, this doesn't exist in this scenario. They really are figuring it out on the fly.
Right. Yeah, it's something that they're going to have to try to sort through in the moment. I mean, the NBA has praised players in the past for being outspoken about social issues and about all sorts of things. So
Mhm.
the the dangerous part is what we're seeing here, where if you're praising players for being outspoken, at some point you're going to run into a player who says something that might be offensive, that you don't agree with, and then you
Yep.
have to handle the situation. And so that's what they're going through now.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly spot on. We are yeah, it is yeah, yeah, that's yeah, I mean, you're on it. I don't know why I'm stumbling so much. I just don't have anything to add. And I struggle when I'm speechless. I'm so rarely in that position. But yeah, no, perfect.
Well, we'll have to see how all of this plays out, how the NBA handles the situation, because, like you said, it could set precedent for future situations moving forward, and
Hmm.
we'll see exactly where that goes.
Yep.
All right, but that's a bit about it for us today. Again, and then tomorrow we'll get back to NBA action and see what happens as this season unfolds. Some crazy storylines throughout the season already, so interesting stuff there.
Especially
And
in the standings.
oh my gosh, I know. You look at like
I
the
don't
Spurs, you look
even
at the Jazz, you look
understand.
at, I mean, the
Yeah.
Pacers. I mean, just craziness happening abound. And yeah, it's been a wild season already. You can only imagine what's coming up next.
Can't wait.
Yep. All right, everybody, make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Don't forget to turn on those notifications as well. And of course, over on the podcast side, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody, see ya and stay safe.